Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to the Goal Line Hockey NHL Power Rankings. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Guys, it is time for Week 8 NHL Power Rankings. We are 2 months into this NHL season. We have a pretty big landscape of what the league looks like right now. It is March 12th, 2021 edition of the Goal Line Hockey Power Rankings. Let's get right into it. So, at number 31, staying at number 31, no surprises here, is the Buffalo Sabres. The Buffalo Sabres stay at number 31 in our rankings. They are on a 9-game losing streak. Yes, I said that correctly. They are on a 9-game losing streak. It doesn't get much worse if you're the Buffalo Sabres. And as we get closer to the trade deadline, I would expect to see more names coming out of Buffalo on the trade block. And the Buffalo Sabres just seem to be a team that is going to have their issues once again this year. A team that was supposed to move up in this year's, potential playoffs, and obviously with everything with COVID and stuff like that, the bug, they got into a really tough spot with a really difficult division, and going into the season, it didn't look good for Buffalo. It looks way worse right now. And the Sabres, you have Jack Eichel not playing. You have Jeff Skinner with 3 goals on the season. You have Taylor Hall tripping over the blue line last weekend against the Islanders. I mean, it doesn't get any worse. Let's just keep it the way it is. Linus Ullmark out on IR, the one silver of light for this team. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to say. This has been brutal. Brutal is not even the word for the Buffalo Sabres. At number 30, speaking of pretty brutal, but maybe not as brutal, at number 30 is the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks have been pretty awful this season, but that was to be expected. They continue the rebuild. We knew going into this season they were going to have issues scoring, and we've seen that on full prowess this year. One of the better penalty-killing teams in the league, which is a good thing. Defense wins championships, but you need to score a goal. And they have not been able to do that. And now we're hearing about the potential trade rumors out of Anaheim. Ricard Raquel, Hampus Lindholm, maybe not so much now that he's on the LTIR. But the Anaheim Ducks are a team that needs more scoring. And I don't know how trading Ricard Raquel fixes that. But that's for another day. The Anaheim Ducks have struggled, and they lost to the Kings earlier this week. I just had to keep them down in this week's rankings. They have not been good. At number 29, speaking of another team that has not been good, is the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars have played the least amount of hockey in terms of games played out of the rest of the NHL. Only 21 games this season for the Stars. Things have gotten from bad to worse for the Dallas Stars. They started off the season pretty good once they had their issues with COVID figured out, but since then they have struggled mightily. And again, lack of games played and other factors. They lose last night to the Dallas Stars. They lose to the Chicago Blackhawks. It's been a rough year for the Dallas Stars, and they have those beautiful blackout jerseys, but they have not played well in those jerseys. Let's keep it real. Anton Khudobin was not that great in between the pipes. That's becoming a little bit concerning, especially with Ben Bishop out for at least another month. This has not been a good stretch for the Dallas Stars, and I hate to say it at this point, kind of takes them out of the playoff picture. So that means at number 28, we have the Ottawa Senators heading up north of the border. The Ottawa Senators had a rough week against Edmonton. Most teams struggle against Edmonton, maybe except Toronto. But besides that, everybody seems to struggle against the Oilers. But the Senators, it's been on full display. They have not been good this year. They are the worst team in the North Division by far. And I think we're going to see that continue the rest of the year. And as things get worse for this team, we're going to see some heads roll. Whether that's a head coaching change or some kind of management change, I don't know. But the Ottawa Senators have not been good enough. I would not be surprised to see some change over the next 2 weeks in Ottawa. Now, a team that traded their captain to another team on the West Coast, that happens to be the San Jose Sharks. Moving on to number 27 in our power rankings is the San Jose Sharks, Erik Karlsson. He was on the Senators and then moved to the Sharks, so perfect transition, right? Yeah, that was pretty bad. Number 26 or 27 is the Sharks. The Sharks have not been good. They are at the bottom of the Honda West Division, and that has been on full display. Another team that, like Dallas, has not played a ton of games, but they have not been good enough. And goaltending's been questionable at times. lack of scoring, consistent goal scoring has been an issue, and they have some defensive issues. I like Bob Bugner as the coach, but that run and gun style just doesn't seem to be working for the Sharks. It's just too much offensive mindset and not enough defensive mindset, and that tends to hurt when you don't have the best goaltending in between the pipes between Devin Dubnyk and Martin Jones. That's a recipe for disaster. We've seen that, unfortunately, for the Sharks this year. At number 26 is the New Jersey Devils. Now, the Devils have had a decent run in the beginning of the year, but ever since Jack Hughes' production has slipped up, the confidence level for the Devils has continually dwindled. And with Nico Hischier in and out of the lineup has not helped matters any more for the Devils. And when you lose your captain, they announce he was the captain, and then a day or two later he gets hit by a PK Subban puck and he's out once again. It's been a rough year for the Devils, Nico Hischier in particular, but with him not down the middle, Jack Hughes gets exposed a little bit more. He's playing a little bit more minutes. As a sophomore, Jack Hughes is definitely getting thrown to the wolves, and he's done pretty well for the most part, but still, it's a development for this Devils team. Yegor Sharangovich, just a lot of young guys. Maltsev, a lot of young guys on this Devils team that just don't seem quite ready. As they continue to develop, we will see that. But as of right now, the Devils have a lot of work to do. So that means at number 25 in our power rankings is the New York Rangers. Now, they are currently on a 3-game losing streak. A rough start here for the New York Rangers. They start off the season pretty rough. Things got a little bit better, and then they never really recovered after that. And, the New York Rangers are one of those teams where the lack of goal scoring has been an issue. Kind of like the Ducks, kind of like the Sharks. They just haven't scored enough. And obviously with Artemi Panarin going back to Russia, he's back, which is good news. But the problem is he's going to take a while to come back into the lineup. And with the way their team is right now, we saw Lafreniere and Buchnevich go off for about a week and a half maybe, but they have continued to kind of slide down once again, and that's been the story for the New York Rangers. So hopefully things get better for the Rangers. I don't see it happening this season, maybe next year, but again, we're seeing the Rangers continue to develop, and that's a good thing, but again, they're going to go through the growing pains. We're seeing that right now. Number 24 in our power rankings, we're heading up to Hockeytown. Yeah, we're heading up to Hockeytown. And yes, the Red Wings are not the last team in our power rankings. At number 24 is the Detroit Red Wings. Now, the Red Wings are making their way up in the power rankings. They're playing pretty well. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning last night. And that's no easy task. The goal horn was not going off, sputtering like crazy last night either, which was kind of nice. But the Red Wings find a way to get a victory, and it wasn't a pretty game. They were up 5-2, ended up winning only 6-4. Tampa definitely came back in the third period, but give them credit. They were able to find a way to beat a really solid Tampa Bay team. All right, we're going to take a quick water break. All right, so moving on up to number 23. We're heading out to the Central Division, and that is the Nashville Predators. Now, the Nashville Predators have had their fair share of issues this season. You look at the injury list. You've got Roman Josi, UC Saros, Ryan Ellis. Who else is on there? Matt Duchene. It's ridiculous. Brad Richardson now. They have so many injuries. It is unbelievable. And the Nashville Predators are probably going to become sellers at this year's deadline. It's been a rough year for the Predators. They get, pounded in last night by the Carolina Hurricanes. We've just seen this theme continue for the Predators. It's been a real issue, and unfortunately, they find themselves on the outside of the playoffs looking in. I just don't see themselves even getting a sniff at the playoffs this year. They're just too far back already. At number 22, we have the Calgary Flames up in the North Division. They have really struggled too. They have officially become the second worst team in the Canada division. Maybe not in the standings, but with the way they've played the last 2 weeks, I am quite concerned about Calgary. And, they bring in Daryl Sutter, which is a good thing, but there's a reason they needed to bring in Sutter because there were a lot of issues with this team, and they still are struggling a little bit right now. So hopefully they're able to turn it around. But as of right now, I got some genuine concern here for this Calgary Flames team. Can they fix it? Absolutely. But As of right now, Daryl Sutter still getting his feet back from playing in, he hasn't been an NHL coach since the Kings, I think 3 years ago. So it's going to take a little while, but the Flames, they're running out of time. As weeks and weeks go by, they continue to fall in our power rankings, and we saw that again this week. At number 21, we head back to the Central Division, and that is the Columbus Blue Jackets, who still find themselves on the brink of playoffs. But now, as the Blackhawks continue to win games and the Blue Jackets continue to lose games, the ground is starting to become, the gap is widening. And, we saw it on full display last night in Patrick Laine's press conference with the media, post-game press conference. He was very disappointed. He said, "I hate losing. That's why I left Winnipeg. I hate losing." And it just seems like it has just been a brutal, brutal season for the Blue Jackets. Patrick Laine in particular, he played pretty well in the first two periods, and then John Tortorella benched him in the third period for a lot of the period. And, they blew a 4-2 lead. They lost the game 5-4. Give Frank Vatrano credit. But again, there's a Florida Panthers team that they feel they should have beaten last night. They played good enough in the first two periods to win that game, and they choked it. They choked it away. So really, again, Columbus, it's been a rough year, but there's no excuse. There's no excuse. At number 20, we got the Los Angeles Kings out on the West Coast at number 20. They are officially the best team in California. Congratulations, you're at number 20. The Los Angeles Kings, again, they find a way to beat the Ducks this week. That adds a couple points. You find a way to beat teams that you maybe shouldn't, like Minnesota, like Vegas, and you're going to find yourselves potentially in the playoff picture. And the Los Angeles Kings have been able to do that for themselves. They've played fairly well. They haven't been one of the best teams in that division. I think Arizona is still ahead of them in my mind. But the Los Angeles Kings, man, they are going to be a competitor in this year's playoffs. And let's remember, they don't have a lot of their young talent still in the lineup. Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte, who's the other guy I was just thinking of? I completely forgot his name. But they have some talent there. And I think this is very exciting for the LA Kings. Goaltending, Jonathan Quick has played fairly well recently. Cal Peterson. This is all good stuff for the LA Kings. So we'll see what happens. But again, it's still early enough in the season where the Kings can fall off. But again, there's a real chance that they could get that fourth spot in the West Division. At number 19. The Vancouver Canucks. Now, the Vancouver Canucks, this is high praisal for the Canucks, but again, they lost again last night to Montreal. They've had their issues with other teams in their division, but the Canucks have shown a little bit of life, specifically in between the pipes. Thatcher Demko has been unreal for the Canucks and kept them in a lot of these close games that they've had recently, and I really like what I've seen from Thatcher Demko. I don't think he's going to be a Vezina finalist, but with the way he's playing, if he did this for the entire year, you could argue he could be in that conversation. Again, very exciting news for the Canucks because they need a bona fide number one goalie. They haven't seen much from Braden Holtby, which has been a problem, but this is a good sign. Thatcher Demko's getting on the board. The scoring is dried up still for the Canucks, but if you have good goaltending, it seems like they could keep themselves in games. We've seen that from the Canucks over the past 2 weeks. So, moving on up to number 18 is the It's the Arizona Coyotes. The Coyotes have not been super great recently, but they've found a way to get some wins when they can, and I think that's huge for the Coyotes. There's another team that I really like what we've seen from them. Again, they've had some issues. They've had some issues with the goaltending and stuff like that, but they have a legitimate chance at that fourth spot in the West Division still. So it's up for grabs, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try and take that. But they're going to have some tough competition with teams like Minnesota, with teams like Colorado. It's not going to be an easy road to get that last playoff spot. Heading back to the North Division at number 17 is Les Canadiens de Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Canadiens didn't really move in our power rankings very much. They're just a middle-of-the-pack team right now. And if they want to become a playoff team, they're in a playoff spot right now thanks to the drop-off of teams like Calgary. But if a team like Vancouver starts to turn it on, dare I even say that, but this is a team that Montreal is not safe in a playoff spot right now. They are not. And if they want to make the playoffs, they have to become more consistent. They have to get more goal scoring if they want to make the playoffs this year. Moving up to number 16 in our power rankings is the Philadelphia Flyers. I had a lot of expectations for the Flyers. They were at the top of the division earlier in this season in that Beast of the East division, but they have really fallen off since then. They haven't been the team that they were really since the whole bug situation, since before Lake Tahoe. It's been a really tough stretch for the Flyers. Carter Hart has struggled. We've seen the team in general, scoring-wise, struggle. But I'm really hoping that they turn this around. Okay, so somebody left a comment on YouTube, but I was reading it. Apologize for that. But the Flyers have just not had it, and I don't know what it is. Are they going to fix it? I hope they do. But it's been a rough run for the Flyers. Hopefully they do turn it around. Maybe, just maybe. But it's been a rough year for the Flyers. Really, since the beginning, it looked good, but they just haven't kept that momentum. So at number 15, speaking of a team that's built momentum since the beginning of the year, it's the Chicago Blackhawks. They have gained a lot of respect in my mind. They, look what they did earlier this week, right? Against Tampa. They lost those games, but they kept it close in most of them. Last week, this week, they've now played... Who did they play earlier this week? They beat Dallas last night, but they beat somebody earlier this week. Chicago's actually a legit team right now, so give them some props. I like what I've seen from the Blackhawks. Do they get in the playoffs? I think they will, based off of just Columbus, Nashville, and everybody else below them falling off. It kind of gives Chicago the ticket to the dance, and we'll see what they do with that. Kevin Lankinen, though. Got to give a shout-out to Kevin Lankinen. He has been very good for the Hawks. I apologize, guys. My throat is a little bit dry today. All right, so moving up into our top 15. At number 14 is the Boston Bruins. Again, a lot of these teams didn't really move much in my power rankings. They just kind of stayed status quo. That's what we saw from Boston. I mean, they lost to the Islanders again last week. That was a brutal loss and a shootout to the Isles. And they've just not been consistent with the teams that they should be beating. That's been a theme here for the Boston Bruins. I don't know. Do they make another move here at the deadline? I think they will. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in on a guy like Matthias Ekholm. That seems to be a name that's been thrown around Boston recently. And even Taylor Hall. Somebody mentioned Taylor Hall would be a good fit. I would be interested in seeing that. But yeah, the Boston Bruins, it's been a rough stretch. Again, it's just not consistent. And kind of like the Philadelphia Flyers in that East Division, they were toward the top of that division, but now we've seen teams like the Capitals and the Islanders pick things up. It's kind of lowered what we think of the Bruins and the Flyers since then. At number 13, lucky number 13 is the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche, in terms of the standings, they're actually lower than most people would have thought. I really would have thought it would have been Vegas and Colorado duking it out for that top spot in the West, but we haven't seen that. We've seen St. Louis kind of turn a corner and Minnesota, so Colorado is actually on the outside of the playoffs looking in, and that's kind of the scenario right now for Colorado. There should be a little bit of concern for the Avalanche. They should make the playoffs. I think they have a good enough team, but that question is now being thrown out there. Do they have enough to get into the postseason? Because there are teams in that West Division that want that spot, so we'll see what happens. Moving up into number 12 is the team in the West Division that's ahead of the Avs. It is the St. Louis Blues. The Blues have been pretty good. Let's just keep it real. The Blues have been, with Jordan Binnington getting his contract extension, which you guys will see that video earlier today. Make sure to check that out. The Blues look to get things going, and they have done that. They have done pretty well. A team that, they have weird games. They have that crazy game against the Sharks last week. But then they're able to put together a couple wins against teams like LA and Anaheim, and it makes you feel pretty good about yourself. And then you lose to teams like Vegas. We'll see them tonight against Vegas. So this is a team that, can they beat the big dogs like Colorado, like Vegas? Because they've shown that they can beat some of the lower teams like Anaheim and LA, which is great. But you got to be able to beat Minnesota, Vegas, and Colorado. Those are the three big ones that we need to see St. Louis more consistently beating if they want to win this division. And that means we are into our top 11. As we are at number 11, another team in the West Division, the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild have really turned it on since coming back from their bug situation. They have played really well, and I like what I've seen from the Wild. The goaltending has been really solid from Kaapo Kähkönen and Cam Talbot, and this is probably a good enough tandem to get them into the postseason. Bill Guerin really, in a short amount of time, has really spun the tires on this Wild team, getting this team really where they should be. I'm very excited to see what the Wild do in this year's playoffs, because I believe they will be in the playoffs. They have been that good. All right, so moving on up into the top 10. We are heading to the East Division at number 10. It's the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins have been pretty good, and I like what I've seen from the Penguins. A lot of people don't like what they've seen from the Penguins. I'm a little bit more confident in what I've seen. You got to win those games against Philly. Those are the big ones right now for Philly and Pittsburgh. But I really like what I've seen from the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that the goaltending seems to finally be stabilizing a little bit. And the goaltending has been a huge factor for the Penguins, whether they succeed or not over the past couple of years. Because the offense has been there in spurts. Defense definitely struggled a little bit this year, but we're seeing that pick up a little bit too. So I like what I've seen from the Penguins. Give them number 10. At number 9, on a 3-game winning streak right now, is the Edmonton Oilers, taking care of business against the Ottawa Senators this week. That's huge. You got to win those games, and we'll see that continue into this weekend. A long stretch of games with the Sens. They need to take advantage of that, and the Oilers seem to be doing exactly that, showing they are the power team over the Ottawa Senators, asserting their dominance over them, and hopefully that continues into this weekend. They start to get closer back to Toronto, who seems to be getting back on their level after a couple of games with Winnipeg. They may be getting back on their stride, so Edmonton has to keep up with the team like Toronto or Winnipeg. So this is important right now. The Oilers need to win some games over the next couple weeks, and I think they should be in the postseason, I would say quite comfortably. So that means at number 8, actually moving down a couple spots, is the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers, yes, they picked up a victory last night against Columbus, down 4-2. They clawed their way back. Actually, it might have been a 4-1 game. They clawed their way back, win it 5-4 in overtime. Frank Vatrano with the OT winner. Yeah, this has been the story of the season here for the Florida Panthers, and they've had their ups and downs, and goaltending's been up and down recently, but they found a way to win games, so I got to give credit where it's due. The Florida Panthers aren't as hot as they were a couple weeks ago, but they are still a top 10 team in my eyes, and they should be making the postseason in that Central Division. Quick break. I'm definitely fighting through this one today, guys. I apologize. Speaking of another team that has on a 3-game winning streak, it's the Washington Capitals. There are 2 teams in the East Division right now that I would be very concerned about if I'm the rest of the NHL. One team is the Washington Capitals. Guys, you know the other team. The top of the division, of course. But yeah, the Washington Capitals have been quite concerning recently in terms of a threat to the rest of their division. They have looked very good. We finally seen Ilya Samsonov come back in. They had a little bit of a scare late against the Philadelphia Flyers. We've seen them blow a couple of leads over the last couple of weeks, so there was a little bit of concern and unease in Washington last night. But the DC team finds a way to get it done. They find a way to get a big victory in Philly. This is a Caps team that just has to find a way to win games right now. And with other teams kind of falling off or just being mediocre like Boston, Pittsburgh, and Philly, it allows a team like Washington to just move up the power rankings, move up in their standings, and gain a little bit of ground over some of the teams below them. So really a huge stretch. Now that Samsonov is back, he has to play good if the Caps want to win this division, which it seems like they're going to have some stiff competition from the boys in New York. So at number 6, actually doing pretty well right now, I have to admit. Since the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, the Winnipeg Jets find themselves at number 6 in our rankings. Now, they have done fairly well. Look at a tale of two cities, kind of, really, between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets have turned it up a notch, really, since we've seen a team like Montreal and Edmonton fall off a little bit, allowed a team like Winnipeg to just shoot up. And they have done exactly that. They beat Toronto the other night. They did lose that game last night to Toronto, but they kept it in overtime, so they only lost out on a point. So they continue to gain ground on a Toronto team that has looked unreal in that North Division. But they've been making some competition there for the Leafs and the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck has been pretty good. Not so much last night, but we've seen some late goals from this team. Dubois back in the lineup. it's all looking pretty good for the Winnipeg Jets in terms of making the postseason this year. Maybe even a whiteout if they get some fans back in Manitoba. Now, it is time for our top 5. And at number 5 is the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights slipping down a little bit in our rankings. They stayed pretty close to where they were last week. I believe they actually were number 5 last week. We didn't see much shakeup between Winnipeg, Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Vegas because we just didn't see much change. And I really like what I've seen from Vegas. They just continue to do their thing. They're doing really well. They seem to struggle sometimes against Anaheim and San Jose, which kind of concerns me. But again, they find a way to win those games, so I'm not overly concerned. But Vegas, now that Robin Lehner is back on a AHL stint with the Henderson Silver Knights as he continues to condition, that's a good sign. So they'll have Fleury and Lehner back in the fold. That duo is very much a threat in the West Division. And as Marc-Andre Fleury gets maybe a little bit tired, this is perfect timing for Robin Lehner to come back, solidify the pipes down the stretch for Vegas to solidify that top spot in the West Division. At number 4 in our power rankings this week, I'm wearing their jersey today because they need the representation. And at number 4 is the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders have been really good. 7-game winning streak for the New York Islanders. I believe a 9-game point streak for the Islanders. This is what separates the great from the elite. And I dare I say elite for the New York Islanders. But guys, let's just take a look at what the Islanders have done the past, now this is 3 years in a row now since Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello have come in. The first year, the Islanders were second place in their division behind the Washington Capitals, right? And they went to the second round. Yes, they got killed by Carolina, but they beat Pittsburgh in the first round. Year 2, they go to the Eastern Conference Final and take Tampa to the dance in 6 games. And then this year, they are 5th in the NHL in standings and 4th in my NHL power rankings on a 9-game point streak, a 7-game win streak. Don't sit here and tell me the New York Islanders aren't becoming a fringe elite team right now. The goaltending of the White Whale, Ilya Sorokin, and Varlamov has been unreal. You talk about one of the best tandems in the league. I mentioned in the offseason last year, this may be the best goalie tandem going into this year, obviously with Piero Greco and who's the other guy? Mitch Korn and Barry Trotz's defensive-minded system. The New York Islanders may have the best goalie tandem in the league, and we're seeing that right now. Dallas, with Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin, we haven't seen Bishop in 6 months, and Khudobin has not looked great recently. So that tandem can go to the wayside. So who's another tandem? Maybe Vegas with Fleury and Lehner? Maybe, right? The New York Islanders have to be in that conversation. And it seems like every year there's at least one goaltender from the Islanders in the Vezina consideration. 2 years ago, it was Robin Lehner. Last year, Thomas Greiss was even in that consideration. I mean, that's just how good he was. And now we're seeing it from Varlamov and Sorokin. The Islanders, man, I'm telling you. I saw in the live stream Twitch comments last night, a lot of people were saying, the Islanders are a difficult out in the playoffs. And you're saying that your team is going to get the Islanders out of the postseason? The disrespect has been real for the Islanders. It continues to be until the Islanders win another, dare I say, I knocked them all over. Until they win this bad boy again, the Islanders are not going to get the respect they deserve. But let's be honest, the Islanders are right there. I'm saying it right now. I don't want to say the word because I don't want to jinx them. But the Islanders are for real, guys. And we've seen it over and over and over again. People continue to deny them. And that's perfect. That's fine. Another team that is on a 7-game winning streak on the East Coast at number 3. I'm going to give some love to the Carolina Hurricanes today. The Storm Surge, the Caniacs, you have arrived. All rise. A 7-game winning streak for the Carolina Hurricanes. They have been really good. Another team that has been underrated on their win streak. If this was Toronto or Montreal or one of those other teams, we'd be talking about this like crazy. But because they are Carolina and the Islanders, nobody seems to be talking about it. But they are playing unreal. Rod Brendamore's team has been really good. Capped off with a 5-1 win last night against the Nashville Predators, a team that he just stomped and stomped and stomped on the Nashville Predators. Gave them a little mercy in the third period. It was already 5-0. But Carolina, man, I love what I've seen from the Carolina Hurricanes. Dare I say we see them in a conference final, the New York Islanders and the Carolina Hurricanes. That would be a great rematch. And that means at number 2, we've got the Toronto Maple Leafs, baby. The Toronto Maple Leafs have made their way back up. After a 3-game losing skid, they lost to Winnipeg earlier this week. Almost lost a close game last night against Winnipeg. They find a way. Austin Matthews with a just beautiful, slick hand shot. Just drops it bar down. Toronto Maple Leafs are for real, and we've seen them really turn it to another level this year. I'm actually happy to see the Leafs succeed. They need the success, and even when the fans that go on Twitter and freak out and rant, they're still winning games. So at the end of the year, until the Leafs win a championship, kind of like a team like the Islanders or the Hurricanes, nobody's going to take them seriously till they get far enough in the postseason and even potentially win the whole damn thing to get that respect from the league. That means at number 1, we have, once again, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay was number 1 in our power rankings last week. Yes, they lost to the Detroit Red Wings last night. I know. But we've seen them, they fought back in that game. They fought back in a game last week against Chicago. They were down bad in that game. They came back. So we've seen this team, even when they're down in games, continue to fight back and find a way to keep it a close game. Keep, even a team they should be beating. They may have lost the game, but it's not the result that maybe they thought. And again, this is a Tampa Bay team that, with the amount of skill they have, they're going to be a hard team to beat on any given night. And we've seen that from the Lightning consistently, not this year, not just last year, not even the year before that. The past 4 or 5 years, Tampa Bay has been a legitimate team. And talk about elite status, you've got to give it to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that is it for our Week 8 Power Rankings. Guys, I just want to apologize again. My throat's bothering me, just really sore, hard to talk, but I am fighting through it for you guys. I know you guys like this content, and it is our Power Rankings. So I'm sure plenty of you guys will be disappointed or whatever in the comments. These are bad Power Rankings, whatever. It's all cool. If you don't agree with me, leave your Power Rankings in the comment section down below. Who do you think is... Leave your top 5. Leave your top 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, you want to see the latest news around the NHL, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.